blockbuster, and you would think, okay, this is a movie about a guy with a magical ring and a magical, he wears green spandex. What? I've never heard of this superhero. But then when you're doing your research, you know, it's one of the longest comics of all time. It's actually a really amazing story, and being on the set with Martin Campbell, Peter Sarsgaard, and Tim Robbins, and Ryan, you know, he had such a high level, you know, high standards, and there was so much quality on the set that you really saw, wow, I'm making a good film. I'm not just making a big box office franchise movie. I'm making a really good.
Of the Green Lantern, most people assume it's just another simple superhero story. A guy with a magical ring wearing bright green spandex doesn't exactly sound like the kind of character everyone instantly recognizes. But once you actually start researching the character, you realize something surprising. The Green Lantern is part of one of the longest-running and most respected comic storylines ever created. The mythology behind the character is massive, and the story itself is far deeper than people expect. Being on set with actors like Martin Campbell, Peter Sarsgaard, Tim Robbins, and Ryan Reynolds created a very serious atmosphere about the work. Ryan especially had extremely high expectations for the project, and the overall standard on set was incredibly professional. It felt less like making a flashy blockbuster and more like creating a genuinely good film that people would appreciate for its quality and storytelling. Now, let's talk about something completely different that has been on my mind lately. I'm honestly starting to wonder whether I should consider legal action against Blake Lively. The reason I'm even thinking about this is because of a document that was recently filed in court. In that filing, I'm being indirectly accused of participating in a so-called online campaign against her. According to the report submitted by one of her experts, certain influencers and commentators supposedly worked together with defendants in the lawsuit to push negative narratives about her online. My name was mentioned in connection with that idea, even though no one from their side ever contacted me, interviewed me, or asked whether I had any involvement in anything like that. They simply placed me in the narrative because I reported on the lawsuit and shared my own opinions based on the information that was publicly available. The document claims that evidence shows social media influencers were coordinated by the defendants after Blake filed her lawsuit. As an example, it describes text messages between several people discussing the possibility of producing a viral video that would criticize Blake's claims and challenge her narrative. According to the filing, an influencer was encouraged to produce a video that could spread organically online. The group allegedly brainstormed talking points that would question Blake's version of events and reference previous controversial situations that had involved media narratives and public judgment. The filing says that days later a video was shared among them for feedback, with suggestions about which arguments should be emphasized and how the message should be framed. Eventually, that video was posted across multiple platforms, including YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook, and the audio was also distributed through podcast platforms. In that video, the influencer criticized Blake and the media coverage around her case, referencing interviews and discussing text messages that had already been released publicly by the other side. The influencer also expressed the opinion that Blake might be abusing her influence and power in a way that could ultimately harm other women who make legitimate claims in the future. According to the court document, the spread of that video allegedly contributed to a wider online backlash against Blake. Here is the part that really confuses me. I had never even seen that video before reading this report. I didn't know who that influencer was until her name appeared in the legal filing. Yet somehow the report suggests that people like me helped circulate the narrative that followed. That simply is inaccurate. What actually happened is something that anyone familiar with social media would recognize immediately. When a major story begins trending online, people start discussing it everywhere. Users search old interviews, past controversies, and public appearances, and they form their own opinions. That's exactly what happened here. For example, one viral video on TikTok compiled several interviews from different moments in Blake's career and framed them in a way that portrayed her negatively. That video alone received millions of views and thousands of comments. Many commenters claimed that she came across as rude or dismissive in interviews, while others called her a bully or described her behavior as mean-spirited. Some users referenced the incident involving Princess Catherine during her cancer treatment period, when Blake made a social media post that later required an apology. Others talked about interviews where they believed she treated journalists poorly. These comments were written by ordinary users reacting to content they were watching. They were not part of some coordinated campaign. Another video discussing new developments in the legal case also went viral and generated thousands of comments repeating similar opinions. Many people online started saying that TikTok itself had turned against Blake, with posts joking that the platform had collectively decided not to support her narrative anymore. Influencer accounts with large followings shared commentary about the lawsuit, and their audiences responded with their own views. Some agreed with the criticism, others defended Blake, and many simply debated the situation. This is exactly how the internet behaves when a controversial topic appears. Trends build momentum naturally. People who have followed a celebrity for years may already have opinions about them, and those opinions resurface when a controversy becomes public again. I personally didn't know much about Blake before this situation. I never watched Gossip Girl and hadn't seen most of her movies. My only awareness of her was that she was married to Ryan Reynolds. My posts about the situation came entirely from reading court filings and observing public behavior that was already widely discussed online. One of my earliest posts about the situation clearly stated that my opinion was completely organic and not influenced by anyone else. I explained that I believed the backlash she was receiving was the result of her own public actions. In that post, I listed several reasons why people might be reacting negatively, including how the movie connected to the controversy had been promoted, how serious topics were handled during marketing, and how public statements from the involved parties created confusion. I also criticized what I believed were mistakes in communication and accountability. The point of the post was simple. When public figures make questionable decisions, the public responds. Instead of acknowledging that context, the report seems to focus on a single post that apparently isn't even properly linked. The document references a post from my page that I cannot locate anymore. It might have been a temporary story or something that expired. Regardless, it is strange that they chose that example while ignoring other posts where I explicitly said my opinions were independent and based solely on public information. Another unusual part of the report involves the way they attempt to calculate damages. The expert included charts estimating the number of impressions generated by posts across different platforms. According to this theory, every view or interaction becomes a monetary value that can be claimed as damages. The report assigns extremely high advertising rates to these impressions, sometimes suggesting numbers like $15 per thousand impressions on Instagram or $45 per thousand on YouTube. Anyone familiar with social media analytics knows those numbers are unrealistic in most situations. Even more confusing is that while my name appears in the narrative sections of the document, none of my actual posts are included in the charts calculating damages. The report lists various media outlets, podcasts, and influencer accounts, but my videos are not among the examples used to support the financial calculations. That raises an obvious question. If my content supposedly contributed to the damage being claimed, why is it missing from the evidence used to measure that damage? It's also worth noting that several people mentioned in the report are mainstream commentators or journalists who simply discussed the lawsuit as part of their coverage of public news. Treating basic reporting as participation in a coordinated smear campaign seems like a stretch. Public lawsuits naturally generate discussion, analysis, and criticism. That's how media ecosystems work. The final section of the report includes graphs showing the timeline of online discussion. Ironically, those graphs undermine the entire argument. They show that after an initial burst of negative commentary in August, the conversation almost completely disappeared for several months. From late August until the publication of a major newspaper article about the lawsuit, there was very little online attention directed at Blake. In other words, the controversy was fading on its own. The graphs then show that once the lawsuit and media coverage resurfaced, public discussion exploded again. That pattern strongly suggests the renewed attention was triggered by the legal action itself, not by any organized campaign. If anything, the data supports the idea that the situation reignited because new claims were introduced publicly. This phenomenon even has a well-known name in internet culture: the Streisand effect. When someone tries aggressively to suppress or control a narrative, the attempt can accidentally draw more attention to the story. Based on the timeline shown in the report's own charts, it seems possible that the legal strategy itself brought the controversy back into public focus. So that leaves me with a serious question. If someone includes my name in a public legal document implying I participated in a smear campaign, despite knowing I was simply reporting on a public lawsuit, does that cross the line into defamation? I am genuinely curious what people think about that. I never coordinated with anyone, never received instructions from anyone, and never participated in any organized effort to target anyone. I simply read court documents, watched public interviews, and shared my personal analysis like thousands of other commentators online. At this point, I am still weighing whether it's worth pursuing any legal response. But I can't deny that seeing my name placed into a narrative like this, without evidence and without even contacting me first, raises serious concerns about how casually accusations can be made in legal filings.